So now we're back with part two. We're going to jump into talking about remote desktop technology. And one of the reasons why I wanted us to have this conversation and to share about remote desktop is because I believe that in this climate, it's important to do our best to prepare for what's coming next. It's very likely that we'll be working remotely for a long time, even intermittently for the next couple of years. And we really want to give businesses the best opportunity to be flexible and to be able to evolve and to survive, because we really are all in this together. So I'm really excited to talk today about the remote desktop technology. We're going to go over the different kinds of technology, and then we're also going to talk about our proprietary product called VIRTUALe, or proprietary service and product. So we're going to talk about that, and I'm really excited about that as well. So let's start with the basics. What is remote desktop technology?
So let me talk about I think what the pandemic and the situation
Sure.
now is going to change. I think you know, a number of conversations I've had with a number of our clients, C-suite, president, CEO, CFOs, and all in agreement on one thing is I think with what's happening here with the remote workforce and people sending all of the employees home working remotely, it's going to fundamentally shift how businesses in general think of workforce and often and also offices. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right that we should help our clients and also educate as many people as possible in regards to how that future is now shifting. You know, and that said, I think business is going to start looking and say, hey, you know, do we really need to go ahead and invest in having all this massive office building to house all of our employees? Maybe it makes more sense to go adopt a lot of these flexible workspace where employees come and goes, maybe not being in the office all the time, maybe in the office part of the time. And I think businesses are going to realize that, hey, there's a lot of significant savings from just having to go pay with lease and, you know, just a household of employees, and a lot more flexibility in how they can manage a workforce. That said, the core part of tying all this together is obviously communications. Phone and telephony is one thing, but also the remote desktop technologies is also a very core part of the tenet to how all this is going to be to have to work. Remote desktop technology, as most people realize, has been around for a long time, and it comes in a lot of different flavors. In our last video series, we talked a little bit about remote desktop technologies, such as Log Me In or Go to My PC. Those technologies are really designed and tied to, or even TeamViewer, which will also use those tools ourselves. Those technologies are really set up to be designed to tie into a one-to-one type environment. What I mean by that is meaning that the endpoint those technologies are meant to connect to is really for an employee to connect to a PC that is assigned to them at inside the corporate environment. I mean, that's really what it's meant for. Log Me In lets you go ahead and log into a machine that is actually housed in a corporate office that is assigned to, you know, to a particular employee. So one of the...
In fact, didn't we have a customer who was using that kind of technology for QuickBooks, so his assistant could log into his computer to get QuickBooks?
Oh, yeah.
And then he
lost
it. He lost the computer and nobody could get it to QuickBooks. Yeah. That's business continuity. Yeah.
We'll talk about that as we move into the why advantages. That's not a really good idea on how you house some of your data. That said, the remote desktop, and there's a lot of times there's really two things that I want to clarify a little bit. And most people start looking into, and most businesses start looking into remote desktop technology. There's a couple of terms that are going to come across. They're going to come across a term that a lot of times is interchangeably used, not necessarily correctly, of RDP and RDS. Now, both of those are really Microsoft technology. RDP is the remote desktop protocol. That's actually all that drives and make a lot of these technology work. RDS is a remote desktop server, or remote desktop service is actually the function that is inside the Microsoft Windows that lets you do remote desktop. Now, one of the things I want to point out with a lot of the log me in and go to my PC still use some of the base technology to do this, but they do this very differently from the built-in Microsoft service such as remote desktop server. Remote desktop server is a technology that's been around within Microsoft. It used to be called terminal services for years and years. And what that enables us our clients to do is leverage that technology and basically build a virtual desktop environment. Terminal services is something that's been done for a long, long time, and that technology has matured drastically over the years. And there are also other offshoot technology that also works similarly, such as Citrix. And now that VMware also, PC over IP, they all serve different function. But how I would describe it best is there's a server-based technology and there's a desktop-based technology.
Okay.
Desktop PC, individual machine-based technology are the ones such as log me in, go to my PC. And then you have the server-based technology, which is such as, I'll use Microsoft RDS technology as an example. What that enables companies to do is to take all of their PCs and laptops and basically aggregate them into a centralized managed cluster of server. The attractive part about this kind of remote desktop technology is that it's from a security and also from a centralized management standpoint, they are centrally managed within a secure environment such as a data center or within the client's, they're looking to invest in the infrastructure to build this themselves within their own data center in the corporate campus. Is all of this is centralized managed, the data resides in one place. You can control who has access to it and how they access it, even if they're working remotely, because they're still consuming all of the data applications in the corporate environment. The remote connectivity allows them to go ahead and consume the data as if they were still sitting in the office.
So Eric, how would they, if I'm at home and let's say I'm not using, let's set VirtualE aside, we'll take that separately. But so then we're not using VirtualE, but they have remote desktop protocol, or I guess remote RDP protocol, server.
Service, yeah.
The service, they have the service. And I'm at home and I just VPN over the internet. Is that how how does it connect?
It would be, that would be a good example. Let's a given company who has got this infrastructure in place and all of the employees, and most of the clients that we've done this for usually get to the point where realize that there's no reason to go ahead and we'll get into the CapEx versus OpEx expenditure on this, is that they no longer have to they aggregate all of this server into the data center, and the employees who's going to be working from home would literally just VPN back into the corporate campus and they just use a remote desktop client, which are built into every single Microsoft PC.
Got it.
That shipped since I believe Windows XP or maybe even earlier. Has that technology and capability built in. Even if they're using Macs, they will be able to download a free Microsoft remote desktop client and remotely access all of this, and they will work as if they were remotely connected to, as if they were inside the office.
In order for them to do that, they would have to have a lot of knowledge on site, right? In order to create that environment, to create a data center on a corporate campus, their own data center.
Yeah, to build a remote desktop environment within a campus, it's certainly doable, but it would require, most likely you're going to have to want to build it and deploy it. It can't be done, there are a lot of companies out there, IT VARs, and also a lot of IT services company can help clients put those together, and we can certainly do that as well. But what that entails is, and this brings into the conversation of how you want to spend your money.
Right.
And as with most infrastructure investment, you're looking at a significant capital expenditure, both upfront for investing in hardware to be able to do it, the licensing, which in this day and age, given Microsoft licensing, that's probably a pretty significant piece of the cost, and also the professional services to put it together if you don't have an internal IT team to be able to leverage to build this. Now, that said, given that with the pandemic and the economic downturn we're looking at and business slowdown, a lot of businesses are looking at how do we control the cost? How do
Right.
we not have that massive capital expenditure to go out and invest in something like this?
Mhm.
And this is where part of our service, where VirtualE comes in. VirtualE we have is our hosting environment that is built to support this kind of environment, whether it's in part or in whole, fully in our data center.
Right.
And we've got environments for some of our clients where they literally do not own a single server. We house everything for them, including remote desktop server in our data center. And we have other clients that have partially inside our data center, and they still have part of their servers within their own campus. And we just built the link to to have them work interactive seamlessly from between the locations. So what VirtualE is built and designed to do, unlike most public cloud, is that VirtualE is not a public-facing cloud, meaning that any one of the employees will not be able to just go ahead and go to a website, dial up, and do a connection, and go ahead and access this data. That's not what it's meant for. VirtualE is an environment that we design to support our clients to augment their internal infrastructure, or to basically work as an extension of their corporate environment. And the only way they're going to be able to access this is they still have to go through corporate firewalls and corporate security. If their employees want to access a server that's housed within our VirtualE service, they still have to connect back through the corporate firewall using their VPN, using their credentials, and go through all the same security policy before they can access it. Because when we design these environment for our clients, it is designed to only be accessible for certain places, and we use IPsec VPN to secure the endpoints.
Mm-hmm.
In cases where a client needs to have more secure, we can actually do dedicated circuit run between their office and our data center where nothing is exposed to the internet.
Which is, I think, fantastic that can happen, because it's just so much more secure. It's just not visible to anybody. It's that private link. So that's another layer of security. How did you guys come up with the idea for VirtualE? Because we've had it, Consilien's had VirtualE for at least a decade.
VirtualE in its various form has been running for probably about 12 years. This was a service that we saw a need for when the virtualization technology platform started maturing. And it started out as, really comes down to it at the inception of this, we started looking at it and, you know what, times are changing. Why would we want to go out there and have a client do, you start looking at from a cost management and also from a business standpoint. If you're going to invest in infrastructure, you have to amortize it over X number of years before you see money return. But no matter how you amortize it, you're still looking at a big chunk of capital outlay up front for the licenses, for the hardware, for the security, for the professional services, and everything else is set up. And then on top of that, you still need to layer on management costs. Either be that in the form of your internal personnel, you hire a managed service provider such as ourselves to manage it for you. You still need to make sure it's backed up. And you have all the, and not to mention that one of the other things that most companies don't take into consideration too is, what about energy? Energy consumption, both in terms of operation costs, cooling costs, and the cost of running a data center, and even a small one, it adds up. So you take all that cost and you amortize it over a 5-year period, which is a typical life cycle that we recommend that you manage your server infrastructure off of. And you start looking at that cost, and then we started working as versus a platform such as our VirtualE, and looking at that. What the big difference is that when we did the analysis for clients, we realized that depending on the infrastructure and how complex it is, the savings by housing it inside VirtualE, inside environments such as ours, can be anywhere from 20 to 40% savings.
Savings, yeah, no, 20 to 40% savings. That's tremendous.
Over a 5-year period. And the big part of that too is that now you're also not having to look at a capital expenditure, big chunk of cash up front. You no longer have that big capital expenditure up front and they have an amortizer over time. Now it becomes an operating cost on a month-to-month basis. And then you can grow this over time. Unlike when you're investing in hardware, a lot of times you have to kind of project out, okay, how far am I, 3 years down the road, how big is my infrastructure needs going to be? I have to buy all that up front, a very significant chunk of it up front, and then add to it over time. versus VirtualE, literally because of the licensing and also your consumption model, we can actually increase the resources, both in terms of licensing and also CPU, hardware, storage, backup,
Right.
the rest of that, increase it based on what you need now, and then over time increase it and then bump it up.
And that's the other positive aspect of it, the scalability.
Yes.
Scaling up, because we've had one customer on VirtualE for about a decade, and they have grown tremendously in those 10 years, right? Yeah. And so we can just add another person. How easy was it, Eric, to get their workers home because they were using remote desktop?
The clients who are using those remote desktop, the only thing that we really had to scramble for them was they did not want a lot of the employees that were going to send home to be using their own personal PC to access those. So their biggest thing was we had to source a lot of older, refurbished and lower end laptops just so that we have controls over those. That's probably the one thing that we had to provision for them. But otherwise, we just have to provision them with VPN access, and they are off and running. Literally, we didn't have to do much other than they just got to make sure the employees know how to connect remotely back to a corporate network, and afterwards they just fire it up and connect to the environment like they normally do.
So let's talk about redundancy and security with VirtualE. So can we talk a little bit about that?
But VirtualE, given that, because it is, first of all, let's talk about security, right? Because this is VirtualE is housed within our data center, and our data center is housed in the SOC 2, SOC 2 Type 2 compliant data center. It's got it's got about, if I remember correctly, about 4 or 5 layers of security. You got to go through building security. You got to go to sign-in security. Literally, just physical security. You got to go through about 4 layers of physical security before you even get to our server housed within. The data center is set up with redundant power, security, multiple redundant internet pathing, and there's more bandwidth for us to access than the data center we can possibly use. And then on top of all that, we leverage the disaster recovery technology that we use by our partner Datto, and this technology has the ability to go ahead and back up all of the applications, the server configuration, the user data, the settings, the operating system, all of that en masse on a regular basis. And when I say we're on a regular basis, it's like, we have the capability of backing this up to every 5 minutes, and there will be a snapshot on the full system that will be transparent to the user using the system. Unlike traditional backup where you might take hours or even complete, we can do the snapshot backup in seconds, depending on how often. Now, most of our clients only need backup maybe everything, 3 to 6 times a day. But all that data is backed up with within our data center itself. And then that data set, again, is once a day off-sited to a off-site data center that is in Pennsylvania. And that data center itself is, again, replicated to Salt Lake City as a backup to the backup. So at any one given time, any of the data that our client is using, there's actually 4 different copies of it. The copy that our client's using live, a local backup copy within our data center for any kind of quick restore that they might need. And then for the ultimate disaster recovery backup, we have an offsite server in Pennsylvania, and that's even cross-protected back to Salt Lake City, Utah. So there's 4 different copies, and if something happens, and let's be realistic here. We live in California, fire, earthquakes. I mean, you name it, we have it. Yeah. So if knock on wood, the worst case scenario happens, and California slides into the ocean after the next big earthquake, we can still have 2 other copies of that data that can be spun up as a whole environment for clients to access in Pennsylvania or in Salt Lake City.
So the long and the short of it, I mean, the visual is that if California, knock on wood, were to slide off into the ocean, they can continue business on another location. They can go to Michigan, they could go to another state, and the business or anything that's in VirtualE, they're going to be able to recover. So it can be the whole business. Sometimes clients, to your point earlier, they may just want to put their ERP system in there. They might just want to do a hybrid system, but anything that's in VirtualE can be accessed from these other data centers.
And that which brings to mind, that of course brings in a conversation about business continuity. And business
Mm-hmm.
continuity, as we know, given the pandemic, just the fact that we're sending employees home, what that really is, part of that is part of the business continuity plan that most businesses should have. And this is part of it. Obviously businesses still have to plan on how you reallocate your labor, how do you deal with communications, how do you deal with, external communication to customers.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole lot of things that comes into business continuity plan, but the disaster recovery plan for the data portion of it
Mm-hmm.
is housed in VIRTUALe, will handle that for the
Yeah.
client.
And you do have a lot of experience with business continuity planning because 9/11 was the start of Consilien.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's just coming up on almost 20 years. Yeah, but
yeah,
that was actually one of the genesis for Consilien. Prior to starting, prior to the genesis of Consilien, I was with a Fortune 100 firm, and I was the head of project management. And one of the major project we had just completed was a review of the nationwide, for the whole corporate, all 8,000 employees, 200 and some branch locations, of the disaster recovery plan of what happens if there was a major loss incident. And shortly after 9/11 happened, and I will always remember that everybody involved was pulling that binder out, going
mhm,
through all the stuff they reviewed and what they had to do, and to watch all of the East Coast operation fail over to the West Coast. It's one thing to go through tabletop exercises and
right.
go through reviews and policies and procedures and what everybody has to do, but to actually see it put into plan, and to have project management team that actually oversaw the whole thing, just kind of going through checklists and don't really have anything else to do but just to watch over everybody's
Yeah.
shoulders.
So we have deep roots in this. Yeah, deep roots. Well, fantastic. So I think that's it for VIRTUALe. Is there anything else that we left out that we need to touch on?
No, so the only thing I want to add, that if anybody's interested in VIRTUALe, please reach out to us.
Oh, yes.
More than happy to sit with you. And as VIRTUALe is a custom environment, it's not a one size fit all. And it's going to be customized and designed to individual businesses based on that.
So going back to what you were saying about it being customized, a custom solution, one of the things that we would like to offer is to do a cost analysis. So if you're interested, we can help you to see if moving your infrastructure, even part of your infrastructure, into VIRTUALe for it to be fully managed and secure makes sense for your business. That's one of the things that we're doing, and we're doing it for free.
Yep. Well,
Yeah.
definitely coming in with an engagement to help you take a look at that cost analysis. It will make especially sense if you're looking to either invest in building the infrastructure, or at the other time that makes a lot of sense is that at the time where you are leveraging to having to spend a capital expenditure, before you take the step to go ahead and do the capital expenditure spend, I think a business should definitely take a look and see if this makes more sense.
Absolutely. And I always think of those manufacturers or any business that has those legacy systems that, something's getting ready to explode and they need to replace it. So terrific. Well, thank you. Thank you for taking the time, and stay healthy.
Thank you. And everybody stays healthy as well.